Buckle up, everyone, and welcome to Carpool Rugby League, a show where three rugby league tragics talk everything rugby league on your way to and from work. I'm Shayna.
I am the chameleon.
And I'm Mika.
Welcome aboard and on with the show. Well, massive week in rugby league this week. I got a gut feeling we can start to put a line through certain teams. Women's Rugby League kicked off this week in grand style Thursday night. Had everything we thought it would have. Probably produced the upset of the week. We'll go through the results shortly. The NRL has really thrown up some results where I think we can start putting the line through some teams. It was a great week in rugby league. I suppose before we go through the results, Griffo, what caught your eye this week?
Well, I'm going a little bit different this week, Shano and Mika. Normally it's an individual. I think pretty much every week it's been an individual, actually. But this week I'm picking out a team, and that is the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs.
Fair call.
Yeah, it's hard to single out a guy from that team last week because it really was a team effort where they went up. I don't think too many gave them a chance against an almost full-strength Broncos up in Suncorp in Brisbane. They were without their captain and best player in Stephen Crichton. I just thought it was going to be a regulation Broncos win, and I was wrong. I even mentioned last week that I wanted the Bulldogs to win, but I didn't want to surrender my lead in some tipping comps, so I'm going with the Broncos. And that proved to be a dumb statement, but congratulations. The Bulldogs played absolutely exciting rugby league, throwing the ball around. They scored long-range tries. They scored short-range tries. They could have scored a few more. There were a few that they didn't get. The Broncos looked like they were coming back in the back end of the first half. And when Walsh sort of started to turn on what we know he can produce, and then Staggs came up with a brilliant try also, I thought, okay, here come the Broncos. But I'm pretty sure they didn't score in the second half, and the Bulldogs pretty much doubled their score. It was a brilliant performance all round, both in attack and defence. And I think it looks like the Bulldogs will be playing finals football for the first time in, I won't say it's a decade, but it'd be around about that long since they've been there. So that's what caught my eye last week. I want to make a special mention also from the first game of the NRLW to the defence, or the online defence of the Newcastle Knights up against a star-studded Roosters side, including the great Taryn Aiken, and they held them scoreless in the first half under all sorts of pressure. And in particular, the defence, one-on-one defence of Jessie Southwell on the line, where no one got past her. She goes low. I love the way it's a low tackle, and they fall over.
Yep, it's very old school.
So there were, Bulldogs in the men's and the Newcastle Knights defence in the NRLW caught my eye last weekend.
Couldn't agree with you more, Griffo. They were two great things to watch. I think Marty Tapau might have scored in the second half very late.
Oh, you're right. That's late.
Very late.
Yeah.
But really, game over. And I love the one-pointer to put insult to injury.
Yep.
Mika, where Griffo's grab, I think the opposition was probably your fail in the Broncos. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes. Broncos in the...
Next to South Sydney.
Yeah. But I actually have a fail in the NRLW.
Yeah.
I think the Broncos and Eels game I found the Broncos just their defense.
True.
Was
I think that's the upset of the round.
Yeah,
I think
I
that's
was not expecting that.
In both men's and women's. So Broncos.
Yeah.
Broncos all
I was
round.
not expecting the 22
I'm
to 10
tearing
loss.
up here.
Yeah.
I'm tearing up. The poor Broncos. They're copying it from everywhere.
It's a good thing.
Oh, it's so sad.
When I did like the punch up though that happened because
yes,
Anita
yes.
Nuasala.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry if I pronounced her name wrong. Faced a 4-game ban after she was sent to the bin for a hip drop tackle against Ruben Charrington.
Yeah.
And then that's when we saw Kennedy getting in there and punching. And we saw genuine swings too. It wasn't like the men's where they just hold their jerseys up.
The brouhaha.
It was
the fracas. It was a punch. It was Look, I
saw a punch from Nuasala. I didn't actually see Kennedy Charrington. She did a lot of pushing. I don't know if she threw a punch.
Well, I'll tell you now, when I look at those, but I agree with you. I think that the Eels game is the upset of the week across all forms of rugby league, including juniors. I think the Broncos, for me, you could put a line through them. I think that's. Then there's a few teams this season gone. We'll go through the results.
Just question
sure.
Something Mika raised there. Did you say Nuasala copped a 4-week ban?
Yes.
So was that a combination of the punch?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
I don't think
4 weeks in a 9.
That's a massive. And this is we've spoken. And Griffo, correct me if I'm wrong. It feels like every season when we cover on this podcast, we cover the Women's Rugby League. It seems like the punishment doesn't fit the crime in relation to how many weeks they actually serve. Because there was one last year we spoke about, I'm sure of it, where someone got suspended for maybe 3 weeks, and it was like, well, like you're right, 9 weeks, 4 out of 9.
Look, no, if she's got two separate things, that's 2 weeks each.
That's right, but I just think for one thing. 4 weeks for one thing.
Because she got a sin bin.
Hip drop and the punch.
Yeah, because I think the sin bin would be for the hip drop, wouldn't it?
The sin bin was for the hip drop.
Yes, it was.
He should have been sent off for the punch.
I agree with you.
Okay.
Now, I agree with you. I thought she was very lucky to stay on the field. I thought she was going to get given marching orders. And, I don't know. It was funny because it all sort of happened so quickly, and I thought, I'm with you. I thought she might have actually gone, but 4 weeks, 4 out of 9. That's,
she deserves it.
She deserves. That's right. I agree with you. I just think that
things there. The other grubby thing that came from someone who seems to always produce a bit of grubbiness, and that is Rapana with the big hair pull. I think it was on Charrington as well.
Yep.
She produces all these things.
I really
get suspended too often.
I agree with you. I'm going to separate here, and I don't know whether people are going to, people are going to get upset with what I'm going to say. I think in the women's game, the hair pull, you should go, and you should get a week, right? Because the difference and look, when Luai gets his, and the difference is, I think, is that there's different ways that in the men's game we hold it up, and it's very rare. Nearly everyone has long hair in the Women's Rugby League.
Yeah.
And what I find, and it was in the first, and I'm telling you, the Blues would have won the Origin series, only for the hair pulled her down. The hair pull's starting to be used as a defensive weapon when you're short. So in order to give away a penalty, I'll pull the hair. And in pulling the hair, the person comes instantly to the ground. I think if you hair pull in Women's Rugby League, you should be in the bin instantly. No questions asked. And if you do it twice, you get sent from the field.
It'll stop pretty quickly, Shane.
It will.
Agreed.
It will, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep. I suppose while we're having a quick chat, I want to throw something out here regarding player movements. There's a bit of player movements. One interesting one coming out today. Valentine Holmes been told he can look elsewhere.
Ooh.
Very interesting when there's rumblings about from the Hammers management that he's homesick.
What?
So that when you sort of start to put that in the mix, maybe I think the Hammer would be absolutely stupid to leave the Dolphins. I just think he's made something there. He's fullback.
He's made such a big contribution.
He's not going to end up full. I think he should stay at the other one. Hearing some rumblings involving the Panthers regarding Brian To'o. Also seems like he is free to shop around. Now we know Penrith are a very, very good rugby league team. They're a very smart rugby league team. We know they've done this before where they've told players, go to the open market and you come back and tell us what you got. And they tend to match it. I think they're just really gauging on what I think Brian To'o is number one, gauging his worth, and secondly, I think Penrith's gauging how much they need to pay a winger. Wingers and centres are very hard. I think if you're a rugby league club, you can easily pay overs for certain wingers and certain centres. But that's.
Well, I did read that today. Yeah. I know there'd been a few things floating around on social media last week, but that was like, from what I gathered, was just fake stuff that was put out there.
I heard he wanted to go to
the Tigers.
Yeah, really.
Now, today, Danny Weidler was reporting this. I did see a refute from Matt Cameron saying that he is signed here till 2027 and we want to extend him beyond that.
Yep.
Now, where there's smoke, there's generally a little bit of a flame, if not a fire, but I can't see Penrith wanting to shop him around. Obviously, it's coming from his manager because
I think so too. Yeah,
they're paying him a fair bit of cash, but he's worth it for the way that they play.
Yeah,
he is integral to their attack, along with Dylan Edwards, and it has been Taruva this year. But Taruva, we know, is moving on. There's no way that Penrith would be wanting to lose both Taruva and To'o, but particularly To'o, who is the best winger in the game. And he's not on astronomical money. He's on very good money, but deservedly so. So I think it's probably, I don't know who his manager is, but maybe his manager is angling, knowing that if he were to be released, he could, particularly with club like the Roosters who are cashed up, I can't see that he'd want to go to the Tigers, even though his closest friend is there. The Tigers are a basket case. I hope it's not coming from Penrith. I don't see any world where it would be, because there's no logical replacement, and you can't replace the best winger in the game. They've lost a number of outside backs, quality players. Critter last year, Taylor May for other reasons has disappeared, and Taruva is leaving as well. So they'd be foolish to entertain that. It's a different situation from James Fisher-Harris. To'o may have gone, may go to them and say, look, I've been here a long time, won 3 comps. I'd like to leave. But he's from Mount Druitt. Like, this is his home.
Yeah.
He can't be homesick. It's not a... And you mentioned the hammer. I heard that as well. And conveniently timed, obviously, the Cowboys yesterday saying Valentine can negotiate with other clubs. Apparently, he's going to be on something like $1 million a year. And the way Valentine Holmes is playing at the moment, he's nowhere near even a $500,000 player. He was once. He was brilliant. His best days, it would seem, are well behind him. The Cowboys made a massive error a couple of years ago when they backed the players that they had, including Peter Hiku at the time, and said, okay, they let the hammer go. The hammer wasn't in the starting 13. He is in any starting 13. You want to name the best side in the NRL, you want to name an Australian side, the hammer's in there. They're trying to right a wrong there. But I would like to, like yourself, I don't know if it's in his best interest to stay at the Dolphins, but I certainly think it's in the Dolphins' best interest because he is their marquee man, and one of the best in the NRL.
Yeah. For what it's worth, Sam Ayoub, he's the Brian To'o's manager as part of these Ultra Management Sports Group. Don't have many Penrith players. I think the only other one they've got is Isaac Tago, from memory. Yeah, interesting when you start saying talking about shopping players around. It's Penrith do it well. It's like, yep, go, find what you're worth, come back to us. And I think he's also got a top notch, one of the best managers in sport in Australia, so he'll be fine. Interestingly enough, I heard the rumblings was around the Sharks. Latest people to put the highest bid on that on Brian. Another thing
bidding for Toto.
Yep.
Really?
Apparently so.
Okay.
Another thing, if you Penrith fans, while you're out there listening, you'll be wearing your 1967 jersey at the last home game of the year this year. That's to pay homage to the fact that your home ground's getting levelled next year. So if you're someone who likes nostalgic jerseys, they will be, or like buying retro jerseys, they will be doing a 1967 retro jersey for the last home game of the year. Women's Telstra Premiership last week was round 1. The Knights beat the Roosters, as we said, 12-10. The Sharks beat the Cowboys 14-0. Broncos 10, Eels 22, in what I'm calling the upset of the round across Australia. Dragons 10, Titans 18. That was a very good game to watch, actually. And West Tigers 12, Raiders 32. No real need to go through the ladder as it's only week 1. In the Telstra Premiership, however, last week, the Warriors 28 beat the West Tigers 16. Storm 32, Eels 14. As we mentioned earlier, Griffos grabbed 41. The Bulldogs beat the Broncos 16. Cowboys 30, Sharks 22. And I find that a really interesting result because it's usually this time of the year where the Sharks get the wobbles into the finals and don't tend to do well. In what was almost the biggest comeback I've seen in a little while, the Roosters 34 beat the Seagulls 30. That was a game that just had everything basically. If you're into high scoring games, and keeps my theory intact. If you want to beat the Roosters, you got to keep them to 16. Dragons 10, the Panthers 46, in what was a dominant display. Dolphins 14, Titans 21. That was a strange game. That was the Dolphins looked like
exciting.
The Dolphins looked like they were going to win by a country mile early, and then Titans, it's like they sharp shot. And the Raiders 32 beat the Rabbitohs 12, with the Knights having the bye. Just to look at the ladder and what we're looking at in regards to that, the Storm are out on their own on 36, number 1. Second are the Panthers on 32 on 20, and you could almost now, looking at their wins and losses. I know the Roosters have a bye up their sleeve, but I think we can lock Storm and Panthers in for top 4. Roosters, Sharks on 28, the Bulldogs on 26, Cowboys on 26, Seagulls 25, Dolphins 24. Interestingly, in that top 8, the Roosters, the Cowboys, and the Seagulls have a bye up their sleeve. So that's interesting, because the next team to have a bye up their sleeve is the Warriors in 12th. But I'll go through 9th first. That's the Raiders on 24, Dragons on 24, Knights on 22, Warriors on 21. And like I said, they got a bite to sleeve. This is where I think we can draw a line. The Broncos on 20, they've got a bye, but I think they're gone. The Titans on 20, I think they're gone. The Rabbitohs on 20, I think they're gone. The Eels on 14, they're gone. And the Tigers on 12, and they are gone.
I think South have been gone for a while, but I just think South fans have just been optimistic and kind of been hoping.
Look, I think once you start using that word mathematical, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, I looking at that, I think the Broncos down. Probably the Warriors would need to. The Warriors have a bye. I know the Broncos have a bye, but the Warriors have that odd point. That bye for the bye, interestingly, just say the Broncos had the bye, it would only elevate them into 11th and still a game behind those ahead. And the Seagulls as well with that odd point. I just don't see them getting there, but anyway, that's just me. Griffo, any thoughts on the table as we see it?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, locked in Storm for the top 2. Probably minor premiership. Panthers probably top 2.
Yeah.
Roosters top 4. Sharks can't lock them in for top 4. I do think they make the 8.
Yeah, it'd be monumental.
Bulldogs make the 8. Cowboys make the 8. Then I haven't looked at Manly's draw, but they've got the bye this week. I do think they make the 8 because I think they're a quality team. They missed Oliver Kawatu for the last couple of weeks, so he'll add something when he comes back. And then I really think it's a battle for one spot. Yeah, again, look, I could be wrong here. Dolphins are quoted as 71, and this is with the people from Sportsbet. Now, I don't bet, but I find it interesting. The odds, they're on 24 points, 71 to win the comp. And then on 24 points, also, the Raiders and the Dragons are $151 to win the comp, as are the Knights on 22. The Knights are no chance. They're mathematically, well, they could make it, but they won't because they're just not a very good football team. I think, and then the Warriors quoted at 151. I don't think the Warriors win the comp, but I do give them a chance of making the 8. They've got a bye in hand. Again, I've not looked at their draw, but if they've got a decent draw, I think they're a possibility, an outside chance because they are a few points behind. Broncos, if they win every game, so what have we got? 6 to go, including this week.
Yeah. So for the Broncos,
they could make 32 points if they win every game.
Yeah. With the Broncos, they've got Titans, Cowboys. So they've got, Titans away, which is at Gold Coast. Cowboys away. They've got the Eels at home, Dolphins at Suncorp, and then the Storm last, which will probably be a rested Storm.
Yeah, if the Storm rest their players, they could win every game. 32 points. You'd think on 32 points you're going to make the 8. Now,
Storm will 100% rest their players. It's like, I think top spot's already been locked in for them. Minor premiers for sure.
I just look at the problem is for them to win every game. I think of the 30-26 loss a couple of weeks ago to the Dragons. They beat the Knights, but
the Dragons game that was Origin affected. They never.
It's an attitude thing. When I look at the Dogs, I just can't see, I can't see that team turning something round and doing it 5 times in a row. That's my thing.
Because last week Broncos had a full strength team, didn't they? They had
the other one we
last week they did against the Dogs.
Dogs. And then they would come up with a myriad of excuses. We were sick. Arse was in a sling. I don't know what they were talking about. Just instantly, we talk about.
I'm not putting a red pen through them simply because, even though, and I know we talk mathematics, but if you make 32 points, I can't see you missing the 8.
No.
If they were to win every game, now they're capable of it, but I thought they would beat the Bulldogs last week. I think every team they're coming up against, nearly every team, is one of these teams in the fight for that 8.
Yes.
So you'd have to think one of those teams are probably going to knock them off.
Another team that's a bit like that, Seagulls, play Raiders this week, Warriors at home, Tigers away, Bulldogs away, and then the Sharks at home last round.
They could win every one of those games.
They could. That's
like, they don't have to. That's the thing. They can probably drop 1, maybe 2 of those games and still make the 8.
The team, I think, in all that, if you're saying, I think that, funnily enough, I think they're probably the two, looking at it, I think they're the two with probably somewhat of the easier run home. When you think about it, the other team, if you look at the Warriors, they've got the Eels this week.
They win that.
They play the Dolphins away.
I think they win that.
They've got the Seagulls away.
Tough one, but they could win it.
Bulldogs at home. Sharks away. Sharks away last year. It's funny, you look at these. It's we often whinge about the draw, but it's amazing how it's all come together. I think it's just going to be a really interesting. It is going to be an interesting time ahead, and as we start to look towards next week, we'll start and kick off with the Women's Telstra Premiership. So, at 11 o'clock on Saturday, we have the Raiders, funnily enough, in first, playing the Newcastle Knights. Last week was an interesting, I suppose last week was a really interesting game for both these sides. We saw the reason why the Knights have been so successful, and this up and coming team in the Raiders who are starting, who really needed to click, really needed to click into gear quickly, and did that. I suppose for me, I think this is going to be a really interesting game, Griffin Mika, because whilst on the surface you're picking the Knights, I'm saying the Knights are going to win. This is the litmus test for the Raiders' defence. We know that in the background, a lot of background noise has been made about the Raiders and how they want to be this defensive team and this defensive unit this year. They've got their forward pack. They've got the forward pack that they think they can do it. But they are playing up against an absolutely phenomenal side. Tamika Upton at fullback. Jesse Southwell half. Higgins at hooker. You've got Hannah Southwell in there. Clydesdale. These are just really good players. I think, in actual fact, my matchup for this round is in the second row, number 12, and Holly May Dodd. Talk about her last week playing up against Yasmin Clydesdale. It's going to be interesting. Who gets the defensive win by stopping the ball going wide, and who actually gets the ball out wide in the space to create the gaps there. I've got the Knights winning well, but I will be very keen to see what the Raiders do defensively in this one, Griff.
Question, Shane. Was Holly May Dodd, did you mention her last week? She's an English lass?
She is. Yes, she is.
Right.
She is.
Okay.
Yeah, she's.
Okay. I'm not really familiar with her.
She is. A part of me says she's the first English woman to score a try in the New South.
That's what I said last week. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't see if that was her brother either. So, Holly May Dodd. If Lewis Dodd was her brother, but yeah.
Okay. Look.
Injured last year, so we didn't see a lot of her.
Oh, all right. That's what maybe, but I'm not familiar with her. The Raiders are a good team. They're a strong chance of making the 4. Got off to a good start, but they are playing the best team in this competition. You mentioned the stars that shine out of the Newcastle team. One young lady who been around for a few years, but I thought was outstanding last week was Shanice Parker in the centres. I thought she outplayed her more fancied or big name rivals in the Roosters team, Kelly, Surgis. I thought Shanice Parker was the best centre on the field. They're a very strong defensive outfit. They're a big team. They're a skillful team, and they got the best player in the comp in Tamika Upton, and that's why they beat Canberra.
Yep. Shanice Parker, incidentally, was the Knights 2022 Player of the Year.
Well, there you go.
And correct, I could be wrong here, but I think she's actually from Western Australia, or born in Western Australia. I think. I know there's some connection.
Okay.
With
who do you think wins, Mika?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have Knights for this one. I think Raiders are on top of the table, but I think round 1 is always a bit different. Round 1 is always kind of shaky. You never know what the form of the team's going to be like.
Yeah.
Newcastle played the Roosters, who I think are the second best team in the competition.
So I'm going to go Knights.
I'll tell you what, incidentally, if talking about Knights playing the Roosters, if that was the grand final, geez, that would be a good game.
Yeah.
if that game, that's round 1. That's how those two teams are playing round 1.
Yeah, I think those two, they'll definitely be the most dominant.
Imagine them at the end of the season. But yeah, so we're all unanimous in that decision that the Knights will win that one. On Saturday at 12:45, we see the Titans taking on the West Tigers. There's a Seabus Super Stadium on the Gold Coast. Karina Brown and Canfield are out for the Titans. It doesn't make much of a difference to their head pack. The Titans are a side, I think. They're a side for me on the rise. I think this is a team that really, can really make some inroads. And last year they showed better. They were better than Nuisance Factor. They're actually a really solid rugby league side.
They nearly won the grand final.
Yeah, I know, and that's it.
Better than Nuisance.
Better than Nuisance. Well, and remember that was 4 weeks from the final. 4 weeks from the finals. That's what they were being called, and they were only. Yeah. And I've got to be honest, I was on the Titans a bit in the grand final last year. I like the brand of football they play, and it seems like they've brought it to this year. I know a lot of the press earlier on, sort of a few weeks ago, was saying, "Oh, is the Titans bubble going to burst?" I saw none of that last week. I think
they're a quality team.
They are a very quality team. And you know what? They're developing probably what could arguably be the best halves combination in the women's rugby league for Mano and Lauren Brown. It just absolutely, and allowed to do what they do by their forwards laying a very solid platform. In saying that, the Tigers. If you follow the male side or the female side of things, they didn't bring the steel, or they just didn't bring the heart. I don't want to say heart, that's not fair, but they didn't bring something that they had last year. When the Tigers were in games a lot last year, I think the Tigers last week looked like they look like, and you hate to say it because of what the men have done over the years, they look like a work in progress. Maybe that's the Titans. That's the Tigers. That's the Tigers' motto: work in progress. They're going to have to be a bit more than that this week at home. The Titans, and I think this might actually be a comfortable win for them. Griff, no doubt. I think you probably agree with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only reason maybe that the Titans are, I guess, underestimated in some circles is because they are the Gold Coast Titans.
Maybe, yeah.
It's not maybe because of the roster they've got. They're quality. They've got some of the best players in women's rugby league in this team, including Jamie Chapman, Lauren Brown. They're a very good team, and they will win easily, as you say. What do you think, Mika?
Let me look. I think, I'm going to have to go Titans on this one. I think, just last week with the Tigers and how they went, Titans. I think Titans' attack as well will definitely be strong.
Mm-hmm. Key person to look for. She scored 3 tries last week. Emily Bass. She scored those against better opposition. She might get another hat trick this week against the Tigers.
She's incredible. She just finds the space.
And
she just squeezes in there as well.
Well, at 12 o'clock on Sunday, we see the Parramatta Eels, who got, like I said, upset of the week, up against the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks. Last week's game, it's fun. We discussed this actually, sort of on the podcast. We discussed that if certain players sort of worked hard and got what they and did what they needed to do and ran the ball the way they needed to run the ball, they could have half a chance here, and the Eels absolutely showed that. Cherrington was a tackling machine last week.
Which one?
Right, Kennedy.
Okay.
Cherrington.
That's a check.
Yeah, that's all right. Tackling machine last week. Rachel Pearson is an extremely experienced halfback. It was interesting because at first the kicking game probably wasn't as solid as what we're used to from her, and it sort of came better as the time went on. I think what Parramatta have done through having Kennedy Cherrington there, and also Abby Church directing the traffic, it tightened up the middle. They're playing a side this week that just love to go around you and can score points at will by going around teams in the Cronulla Sharks. 14-0 last week, so they kept a clean sheet. And we more or less said that having Penatani in at centre would open up Cassie Staples. Well, Penatani scored 1 try, Staples scored 2, and that's where the 14 points for them come from last week. They're going to do the same this week. It's just that they are so solid, and it's going to be up to people like Zali Faye to come on in, Monique Donovan on the wing to jam in. I think that I look. Whilst I'd love to say the Eels make it back-to-back and it's great, I think the Sharks just have so much class in this side. And the one thing the Sharks have, and you saw it in their game, you see it when these players play for for New South Wales or for Australia is people like Penatani. They've just got this their ability to pass the ball is just so good. They are so good at passing the ball. Emma Tonegano, again, Taylor Preston, their service, Quincy Dodd, the service from these people is just second to none. But if the Eels want to take something from this, again, just going up the middle, and I suppose shout out to Abby Church last week. I thought she played really well. And another player who I thought actually played fairly well for them was Maddie Jones, their prop. I thought she did some really good things in the second row, both the second rowers, also for the forwards. But yeah, I've got the Sharks in this one. After seeing what the Eels did last week, it might be a bit tighter than what I would have thought 2 weeks ago, Griff.
Yeah, I'm going Sharks. Interestingly, just reading through the NRL info, Ruben Charrington is out for the season as a result of that injury she sustained in that tackle.
Yes. Yes.
And the boss Kapua, also out for the season with a PCL. So injuries coming in here for the Eels in a squad that's probably not quite up to the standard of the other teams. Yeah. Good on them for winning last week.
And Chloe Jackson coming in.
Yeah, I don't think too many more wins for this team, but I might be wrong. I'm definitely thinking Sharks here, Mika.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to go Para for this one. I think I'm going to go an upset. I'm going for an upset. I think Para's going to have a bit of bite to them this year. I think they're going to go well. I think it's going to be very, very close scoring. I reckon 2 points between them.
I'll tell you what.
Last time they played, 2023 round 9, 56-6 Sharks way.
Yeah, that was a different Eels side too.
Yeah, I think
Eels were horrible then.
Yeah, I think this year's Para might do something.
Well, you know what? Who knows? I tell you what though, if
they had lost last week,
they made a grand final a few years ago after only winning one game in the regular season.
Yes.
So they are capable of miracles.
If next week we're talking about the Eels being undefeated after the first 2 rounds, I would not have picked that at all. I would have said no way.
If they had lost last week,
and yeah,
then I would have said Sharks for sure. But
something interesting going on at Para if that's the case. But I've got the Sharks winning this one. Wow, this is 1:45 at Allianz. Interestingly, that game, the 12 o'clock game is at Allianz. The 1:45 games is also at Allianz. It is the Sydney Roosters playing the Brisbane Broncos. In what again? Like you think of the Roosters that they had a game last week, against the Newcastle Knights, and this week they're playing the Broncos. So just be looking to absolutely come out and play well after what's happened last week. Sam Bremner, she is in fullback, or named at fullback for the Roosters, coming in to the side. That's the only mainstay change. Actually, I tell a lie there. Bridget Hoy also comes onto the bench for the Brisbane Broncos. These are 2 powerhouse teams that one will be looking for a win. Like both these teams want success. They breathe success. Their business model's made on it at every club level. I think this is going to be a really interesting game to see how these 2 teams bounce after last week. Massive game for the Roosters last week, and the Broncos would think that they were down and a little bit poor. The player for me, I think, that's going to really look to do some big things and create some things is Isabel Kelly, their captain, along with Taryn Aiken in the halves. I think that they're going to play a really pivotal role. Yasmin Strange in centres again. I think that it's interesting. The Roosters sometimes try this power game, and I think the value is really when they use the hands. They've got really, really good ball control. Again, their defence is it can be rock solid. For the Broncos to pull them out of the hole, bring them to Sydney and to win, it's going to be Ali Brigginshaw that needs to lead this one. At home, this is flip a coin for me, so you know my rule. I'd go with the home side. I'm going to Roosters, but I've got no confidence in what I'm picking. I think this is going to be an exceptionally tight game. I'm going to call it. We may see the need for a field goal in this match. But it's going to be exceptionally tight. I've got the Roosters just, Griff.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you on a few things, Shane.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I agree with you the Roosters are going to win, but I don't think it's going to be tight.
Yep.
I think they're going to win well. This Broncos team is nowhere near the Broncos team that I think won the first 2 or 3 competitions.
Very fair.
Yeah, got a solid forward pack. I'll give them that. But Ali Brigginshaw, obviously, still a good player, but not the player she was. She's well into her 30s now. Her defense is not real great. She's still got the skills. She's still got a good kicking game, but she's nowhere near the impact player that she once was, and that happens. She's not 21.
No.
In the days when they were great, they had Taryn Aiken and they had Tamika Upton. Aiken's now playing with the Roosters, and Tamika Upton's won 2 competitions in the last 2 years with the Knights. Nice. If the Broncos make the top 4, they'll have done incredibly well. I don't see them as a force anymore. If you get beat by Parramatta Eels in this competition, you're not a real good side.
Yep.
Roosters, after being defeated last week, and interestingly, and they were absolutely on the Newcastle line for a large part of the game, but they just kept getting repelled by the Knights. You mentioned they tried to play the power game. They probably needed to spread the ball a bit more. No doubt that's correct. But I think the power game is going to be... I don't think the Broncos are anywhere near the side that the Knights are. Same game plan. Roosters will win well. They want to spread the ball. I think they'll win by more because they've got, a lot of attacking weapons out wide. Bremner comes in. We don't know. She's been out for a year, retired, and she's come out of retirement because the Roosters lost... the name's escaping me. Corbin Baxter to a knee injury out for the season. So they got Sammy Bremner. Too many guns for the Roosters, and I think they win well. I'd be surprised if it's not a big win. I'll be flabbergasted if the Broncos can get up here. Mika.
I'm gonna disagree with both of you, and I'm gonna say Broncos.
Really?
But via field goal.
Really?
Yep.
Jeez. Okay.
I'm going with
I was like
upsets
what Griff said.
this week.
I'm happy when Griff disagrees with me if he picks the same team. I'm like, yeah. I hope that I'm picking the
100%.
Roosters. If they win by 100, I don't care. I'll pick them. But really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the exuberance of youth right there.
I don't know what it is. I just think...
I don't know what it is either.
No.
Yeah, I think...
You could be right. You could be a genius.
Yeah, I think I'm just going with upsets this week. So...
Okay. All right. Well...
But I think they'll want to prove something after last week.
Okay.
I agree with that, but I think the Roosters want to prove something as well.
Yeah.
Because they got beat also. They won't want to start the year with 2 losses.
No. You start the year with 2 losses.
You're well behind the 8 ball.
You are behind the 8 ball. You are behind the 8 ball. at Queensland Country Bank Stadium on Sunday at 6:10 p.m. Sees the Cowboys take on the Dragons. In what's going to be another really interesting game. The Cowboys at home will have a lot to prove. This game sort of does my head in a little bit. I was trying to work out who the hell to tip in this game. You have one team, the Cowboys, who lost 14-0, and you've got the Dragons who lost 18-10, but probably needed to play a little bit better. Like, there was a part of me that actually said that in that 18-10 loss, the distance felt further. I think this game, even though it's at Queensland, it's in Cowboys' home game. I think this game is made for people like Tegan Berry to really step up. McGregor, Hopkins in the halves, they've got to really do some really good work in being able to create space out wide for people like Bobby Law, Margot Vella. It's Keely Brown again. I think the biggest problem for me is I see the Dragons leaking meters at will against the Cowboys. I felt last week that they were really struggling to. Their forward pack was not only struggling to keep the opposition at bay, but then when they got the ball, they really struggled to bend the line, and they're up against the Cowboys forward pack, which is actually very, very strong. My biggest thing is I don't know whether the Cowboys, when it comes down to it, no disrespect to Kira Dibb or to Dula Tillett, I just don't know if they've got the creativity to create a lot of points against the Dragons. I'm going to go for an away win here. I've got the Dragons in this one with absolutely no confidence. Only seen them play one game each. Griffo, who have you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm agreeing. I'll be honest and say I don't know too much about too many of these players in both teams. But I do know that the Dragons have Racine McGregor, who I think is the best player on this park. Tegan Berry, we know, is very good. I'm going to go with the Dragons. I don't rate the Cowboys. They got beat pretty easily last week. They didn't score a point. So, I can't see him winning this game. But given that, I openly admit that I don't know that much about a number of the players in both teams. It's a hard one, but I do think the Dragons, based on Racine McGregor, basically.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's where I'm at. Meeks?
I have Cowboys for this one, just because they're at home.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I get that.
I'm not too confident, but I think because they're at home, they'll hopefully win. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's round 2 for the Women's Telstra Premiership. For the NRL Telstra Premiership, it kicks off on Thursday night, the 1st of August. We have a horse's birthday. 1st of August, by the way.
Sorry.
Horse's birthday. Every horse has their birthday on the 1st of August.
Oh, happy birthday.
Regardless of when they're born, funnily enough.
Well, I think that's a bit unfair to those horses.
I was going to say, no mother-in-law jokes.
1st of July.
Yeah.
And they turn on the day after they were born.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's I think that's the art in it. 1st of August, 7:50 p.m. We see the West Tigers taking on the North Queensland Cowboys. Ins and outs. Far out. Do I bother? For the Tigers anyway. Look, Justin Olam, he's in centre. That's probably the only one that really needs any any mention. Interestingly enough, Stefano basically saying that he does not want to be at the Tigers. He wants out. So it'd be interesting. I was actually interesting to see that he's actually been listed in the starting lineup after what came out last week. JT of the Cowboys, big Cowboys fame, is out. Tomalamo, he's out. Ruben Cotter is also out. That brings McLean and McIntyre will be the bookends for them, and I think it would also bring Clifford's on an extended bench. McKaylee's going to be lock, and Nanai and Lukey, of course, they're always there. McKaylee, he is in at 13. So he's also in. Everyone else is more or less an extended reserve. Look, geez, I don't know. I don't know what I can say about this game other than the West Tigers are going to lose. I can't really find any silver lining for the Tigers. The Tigers just seem to find ways to put pressure on themselves and fall apart. I suppose if you're someone who's watching this game and you want to play a little game, you can say you can have a little bet with yourself to see which Tigers player will get 10 in the bin first. That's always a good one. Appy's my guy. I've had him for ages, and he seems to be coming up trumps for me. Look, the Cowboys have too much reason to win this game. Although it's at Leichhardt, it doesn't matter. The Cowboys, they're playing for a top 8 spot. They've got a team that can do it. Tom Did and Chad Townsend, they're playing well. Reece Robson, look, can't really say enough about him. With Val, Kyle Felt, Drinkwater seems to be. They're going to find a lot of space. Talangi, again, he's probably going to score a couple as well. I've got the Cowboys in this one, and I've got them. Yeah, I really have nothing more to add. Griff, that the Tigers just aren't good enough to match it with the Cowboys.
No. Corresponding game last year, I think that was the one the Tigers got into the 60s or something like that.
Yes, and didn't they
I don't think that's happening this weekend.
Didn't the Cowboys return serve?
Oh yeah, and more. I think they might have gone into the 70s, but
yes,
up in Townsville later in the year. So chances are we're going to see lots of points in this game. I think most of them are coming from the team from Townsville. I don't want to talk too much about the Tigers. Their roster isn't as bad as their performance. And it's been that way for some time. No one who in the coaching or administration, and they've gone through several, seems to be able to put together a competitive rugby league team. Even though on paper they should be, they get out there and they play like the West Tigers, and they're an embarrassment to the NRL. They get beat this week. Cowboys, too much class and too much to play for, as you said. Tigers, they have something to play for, and that is they want to release the wooden spoon to the Eels. They potentially they could win, but I don't think it's going to happen this week. Mika.
Tigers losing, full stop. I think Cowboys, they have to win if they want to stay in the 8. Because they're on 26 points, and I think everyone else below them is on 24 points. So
yep,
they want to be even.
They want to stay in there.
Yeah.
Well, on Friday the 2nd at 6 p.m, we see I was about to call them something else. we're going to see the New Zealand Warriors versus the Parramatta Eels. This is at Go Media Stadium. This is in Auckland. Jackson Ford's out for the Warriors. However, Charles Nickel-Klokstad, he is in at fullback for the Warriors. We also have he's on the extended bench, Bunty Afoa. We also have Sean Johnson coming back, partnering Harris Tavita in the halves. So there. I'm just going to go through their back line because if you only because they've got some changes. Nickel-Klokstad's in at fullback with Tenny Zelezniak. He is in at the wing, which has moved Tuivasa Sheck to the other wing, Harris Tavita and Sean Johnson. So that's sort of where the shuffling occurs there. Mitch Barnett is their key forward for the Parramatta Eels. I'm just got to see on the extended bench. Morgan Harper, he's named on the extended bench, which is somewhat interesting. So is Matthew Arthur. Look, they're pretty much 1 to 17. With, of course, Gutho being their captain, Brown and Dejan Arce in at halfback because of their injuries. Brendan Hands will be their hooker. This game, I think that the Warriors actually have a side that is somewhere near the strength that they would want to be seeing. The biggest problem for the Warriors is this. If ever there's been a year where Sean Johnson's been out of form, it's this year. I think he's probably, by his own admission, has not been what he needs to be. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is a bit the same when he's spoken about things, the transition into the side, not being able to get one position nailed down has meant that he at times has felt a bit. His form has waxed and waned throughout the games. Being at home, I've got the Warriors. I just think that their forward pack is just going to be a bit too strong for them. Mitch Barnett's going to lead that. Kurt Capewell chiming in. Dylan Walker's been okay when he's been in the middle. Defensively, Wade Egan's covered a few times, but that's probably where there's some value there. Joey versus Freddie on the interchange bench. Jazz Tavanga, he also on the interchange bench, I think will add some when he comes on. Look, I've got the Warriors winning at home. I'm not going to say they're going to win it well, but I think that they're going to do enough to beat the Parramatta Eels at home. Parramatta are really looking for the end of this season to come and go, so Mad Monday can appear, and then next season ahead. Griffo, who have you got?
No Moses, no Eels.
No,
Warriors.
That's it. Yeah.
I think they do it reasonably well. Sean's back. Even though Johnson, as you say, has not had his best season, I think it's a welcome return for him. As I imagine he takes over the goal kicking from Chanel.
Yes.
There are too many guns for the Warriors. Too important a game. Eels nothing really to play for. They did okay last week, I thought. In patches, but they're a team that really struggled this year, and I can't see them winning here, Mika.
I have Warriors on this one because they're at home, but is Jake Targo in any relation to Isaac?
Well, he's the older brother.
Yeah, okay.
Older brother. He's had a few. He's played reserve grade for a number of clubs, including Penrith. I did hear it was mentioned that he was at the Rabbitohs at one stage.
Right.
Maybe another club, but so he's the older brother. I think he was at Penrith last year or the year before. Didn't crack it for a first grade debut, but he's going okay with the Eels. I don't know if Stevo was injured or suspended or just out of favour, but yeah.
I think it just. I think with Mika Sivo, it just got to the point where you can score 2, but when you let in 3, the ledger's not the same.
Yeah.
Yep.
At 8 o'clock at HBF Park in Perth. It's good to see a game in Perth. Ooh. Would love to see a team there. We see we see the Redcliffe Dolphins. Not call them the Redcliffe Dolphins because they deserve to be called that. Redcliffe Dolphins versus the Sydney Roosters. Are key in for the Roosters is that man in number 4 from his hand injury, Joey Manu. He is in, which means that Michael Jennings is out.
Was he suspended?
What's that?
Was Jennings suspended? I think he might have been.
Maybe, but let's face it, with Manu in, he probably...
Yeah, I know Manu, every day, but...
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Yes, I think he is actually. I think you're right. I think he's probably... he may have played his last game of NRL unless there's some significant injury.
I wouldn't say that.
We've said that before, haven't we? We've said that before, haven't we? And he still comes through. Yeah. That's very true. For the Dolphins, most of their ends are for an extended bench. Same for the Roosters, except for, of course, that big one of Joe Manu returning from his hand injury. Look, some key matchups here. The Hammer versus James Tedesco. Bostock Young. I think Bostock's having... we've sung his praises before on this
a very good player, the Beanstalk.
Yep. I think where it's going to be for me in this game is the Roosters 6 and 7. Kieran Walker just steering this side around. Spencer Linu, he's starting with Rhea Hargreaves, of course, not playing at the moment. Connor Watson up against Kenny Bromwich. I love the Roosters bench. I think the Roosters bench is just absolutely phenomenal. Angus Crichton, arguably in the best form of his career, and for me, I think he's best forward in the game at the moment. He's just absolutely playing out of his skin. Of course, Swatali'i wants to prove himself back into the season before he leaves. Look, the Roosters are a star-studded lineup that can do some phenomenal things. However, at times they can be found wanting, and if you jump on them early, you can actually disrupt their flow and sometimes get the jump on them. It'll take a phenomenal effort by the Dolphins to do this. I just think the Dolphins, whilst they've got some very, very good players, and they've got one of the biggest superstars at the moment in Hammerside, Tabuai Fido, I just think the Roosters are going to be too strong for the Dolphins in this game, Griff.
I agree. The Roosters have by far the best for and against. When they win, they generally win big. Now, last week they had a narrow win, but that was, I think, really only because, and I don't know if it was history created, but I dare say it probably was, where a team scored 3 tries from intercepts. I've never seen it before.
No.
The first one, I think, was Teddy, and 2 and 3 were Luke Keary. So unless there's a repeat of that, I do think the Roosters win and win big. The Dolphins were, they were jumping high through hoops and getting a fish most weeks. I think, unfortunately, their ability to jump through hoops might be on the decline. On paper, they're a pretty good team, but the second half last week against the Titans was very, very poor. And I think that aging forward pack will be... Well, they'll match it with the Roosters in the early stanza, I think. But as the game goes on, I just think the Roosters will cut a swathe through the middle of the field, and I can see them winning big. That's my interpretation. Definitely Roosters for me, Mika.
Yeah, I have Roosters on this one. Yeah, for the Dolphins it is a must win, but I think Roosters will definitely bring it home. But I think in the first 20 minutes it'll be fairly even, and then I think we'll just see a line break with... I think Swaliti will probably get a try. That's what I think.
There you go.
Yeah.
If you're keen for that market, Swaliti. Try, you heard it here first. At Seabus Super Stadium at 3 p.m. on Saturday, starting off Super Saturday, we have the Gold Coast Titans taking on the Brisbane Broncos. Some ins for both sides. I suppose big out. Selwyn Cobbo out for the Broncos. That has a significant... I suppose there's some shifts going on there. Reece Walsh, Corey Oates, Tony Staggs, Mariner, Arthurs, Mam, and Reynolds. That's their back line. For the Gold Coast Titans, an interesting in. AJ Brimson named at 19. Everyone else is more or less an extended bench player, but interestingly that he's been named as an in for them, and he is on the extended bench. Look, I feel like a broken record talking about the Broncos this year, where I can give you 100 reasons why they're going to win, and then they lose. I can't really give you any reasons why the Titans should beat the Broncos, except for this. If their forward pack can begin to get a bit of traction, Sam Verrills will tighten up the middle. That's not a problem. Chris Randall, again, not a bad defender. For me, if the Titans want to win this game, they have to put David Fafita in a room and show him all his good highlights and say, this is what you can do. Can you please just go out and do it? Outside of that, the Broncos have some of the best players in their positions in the rugby league. Reece Walsh at number 1, Ezra Mam number 6. Adam Reynolds, who's been phenomenal over the years. Billy Walters, who's been playing some really great football. Last year especially, not so much this year. I actually think he's. We used to have a thing at Carpool Rugby League, off the boil. For me, he's one of the players that's off the boil. Patrick Carrigan has been an absolute gem. Marty Tapau on the bench for them. The Broncos should win this, and I'm going to pick the Broncos because they should win. My key problem is the games they should win, they tend to lose. I can't really see the Titans team on paper beating the Broncos, but then again, every team on paper seems to do it against the Broncos. It will take a monumental effort. It will take people like Fafita to be on their game. I think the cream in this one's going to rise to the surface. The class of the Broncos too good. I can't tell you the margin in this game because I just have no idea, but I think the Broncos will win this, Griff.
Yeah. In saying that, Shane, I just think because one team's called the Titans and the other team's called the Broncos, one club sort of has a history.
You know what?
Somewhat dated.
I agree with you. That's what gets into your head every time you want to pick this. No.
Yeah. I think that it's the name, the Brisbane Broncos. So even though they're playing, they've had a bad year. It's just the name, the Brisbane Broncos, is traditionally synonymous with success. I mean, they haven't been successful for some years, so they made the grand. Should have won last year, but they didn't. Whereas on the flip side, the Gold Coast Titans, they had a couple of good years initially under John Cartwright, and they made the finals, I think, a couple of years, 2 or 3 years ago. But essentially, they've been cellar dwellers, and then that's part of why, I'm just thinking the Broncos will win. But if you look at form, the Gold Coast have, after a very poor start to the year, they've got their act together, and they actually, I'm pretty sure they beat the Broncos earlier in the year in a big boil over at Suncorp. I want to see the Titans win. I want to even tip them, but there's just something holding me back. And again, I think the only thing holding me back is the fact that one is called the Gold Coast Titans and the other one is called the Brisbane Broncos. And that's it. Because you mentioned, the star-studded lineup, the Broncos, and there was a star-studded lineup last week, and most of the stars are not shining. Ezra Mam is a dreadful defender.
Yeah.
He is, I won't quite say a turnstile, but he's verging on it. He missed a lot of tackles last week that led to tries directly.
So this is where, if you're Fafita, who's the first guy you're running at?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's Reynolds.
But him too.
Depending on what side of the field they're on, it's Reynolds or Mam, and he's going to have success there. Reynolds, I was walking. It might have even been this morning or yesterday, Shane. And I've got a question for both of you, as people who follow the Cardinal and Myrtle.
Yep.
Did the management of South Sydney make the right call in? And I know at the time we were supportive, and I'm not a Souths fan, but I thought they made the right call at the time. They offered him a 1-year extension on where he was at, and I thought that was fair. The Broncos came in, and I don't know if it was 2 or 3 year deal.
3. Yeah.
But Souths didn't want to sign him for more than a year. Was it the right call?
Look, I think if you look long term, like if you said, okay, if he was offered a 1-year deal with a definite extension for 2. So he was offered 1 year plus a possible extension if he was fit and playing well. Yep. So you'd assume he'd play 2 years. You'd argue that those 2 years were probably his best 2 years at the Broncos, arguably. But if you look at it this year, they most definitely made the right call, because they would have lost 2 of their young halfbacks. They would have had to have scratched around to get someone. They wouldn't have bought Jack Whiten.
Yep.
Yeah. I think in the now a lot of people go, oh, South Sydney, let him go. They were silly. Where I had the issue of letting him go was that he was promised a coaching role with South Sydney, being the backs and halves coach at South. That's what annoyed me when he left. He would have, we know, and even at South, it was very widely broadcasted that he is an exceptional coach. Yep. And what he does for the youth and people coming through and teaching them, the guy at South Sydney, every year he played at South, he was the best defensive halfback in the competition. Stats don't lie.
Yeah.
He was outstanding. The problem was his injuries were getting to the point where they were, he not only had some attacking ability, but his defensive ability helped as well. The biggest problem with him was that in the massive games, in those grand final qualifiers, where's the creativity to get it over the line? And I suppose look, to answer your question, I still think South, in a way, got it right. Where they probably are going to struggle is they've let go potentially one of the best people managers and coaches they could have had. Now, that was always something I thought was an issue. But if you look at the 2 years that they've had for the Broncos, and now look at where South Sydney is or where the Broncos is, I think if South Sydney kept him, they would have lost all their young halfbacks. Neither Ilias wouldn't have hung around. We wouldn't have gotten Whiten, and you would have been in the same position as you were this year. My only problem with him leaving was I felt that we probably, that first year with Demetriou, if Reynolds was the half, we'd probably make a shake for the grand final again. Do we beat Penrith? Probably not. But you know what I mean? It's there.
Because in 2018, towards the back end of the season, Reynolds was basically the coach for that side.
Yeah.
When Seibold was doing his own thing. Reynolds was coaching that side.
Yeah.
And Reynolds is always good for an injury, so I think South realised that.
Yeah, and you know what? The Broncos are realising that now.
Yeah. And this showed last year as well that he can get you to a grand final, but he can't win you one.
Good point.
Well, I think the Broncos would be better off just saying to him, look, we want you as Kevy's assistant.
100%. I'm amazed that conversation hasn't come out yet.
And indeed, with a view to taking over from him, if look, Kevin Walters he should not have a job if this team doesn't make the 8.
He's in trouble. He's definitely
Well, he
in
should
trouble.
be. He should be, because this is arguably the best roster in the NRL. I don't know of too many coaches who could have, I was going to say a word that I shouldn't say in the presence of a young lady, the season for this team.
Oh, yeah.
Because who would not have got this team to the 8? Which coach?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't think of too many.
Maybe.
Well, I think, maybe. He's been there.
But you know what I mean? Like, you're right. And this was always the thing at Origin. Oh, he's a brilliant coach. No, he's a great people manager. Look at the team he had.
He had a pretty good team.
He had a fantastic team. I could have coached them.
They had a coach whose name was Cameron Smith. So
yeah, Cooper Cronk.
Look, I guess I'm being a little bit dismissive. Obviously, the guy has some ability to keep people happy and whatnot, but we've seen his own players last year, I think it was, or the year before, come out and say that Reynolds is coaching the team. Kevy's a good bloke. No one criticizes him as a guy. He seems like, an absolute fantastic guy, but I don't think he's a good coach.
You know what I saw last week in the Broncos, Griff? Just to reiterate what you're saying there. It's the first time I watched a Broncos game where I just went, they're unfit. It's like at South. When you let the inmates run the asylum and they play down rather than playing up, you know that they're going to start cutting corners, and it looks like a club to me, and this is just to me, the Broncos look like a club who are at the moment cutting corners.
In saying all that, I think I'm going to tip them. It is really, they lose this and it is all over. I would love to see the Titans win. Titans, I was interested last week after the game, and their guys were still talking about they hadn't given up on the finals. I can't see them making it. They've got a tough draw, but they are playing good rugby league. They've got as many attacking weapons, particularly if Brimson does come on into the 17. they can match it pretty much with the Broncos for attacking flair. Their forwards are pretty solid. I would love to see him win, but I'm still going to tip the Broncos, but not with any confidence whatsoever. Mika?
I'm going to go with the Broncos. I have confidence, but I don't think it'll be a big margin. But I also think just to get a go at the Titans, and you have to sign some kind of contract that you can only play for 60 minutes of the game or something.
I think you make a good point.
Because they're so strong and they're so dominant in about the first half and a bit over that. But I think they usually lose in the last 20 minutes. That's where they let it.
Last week was the opposite. They played their good minutes in the second half.
Mm.
But I'm going to go Broncos for that one.
Cool. Well, that's unanimous. And funnily enough, we spoke a lot about how the Broncos aren't going to win. Because there's no faith in them. Well, one game that's a bit more cut and dry than the one before. At 5:30 on Saturday at Amy Park in Melbourne, it sees the Melbourne Storm taking on the St George Illawarra Dragons. Look, I suppose key in for the Dragons. Tyrell Sloan, he is in for the side. Jack Bird is listed on an extended bench. It'd be interesting to see if he comes in. Rawalala also on the extended bench. I don't know if we're going to see those two take place. With Tom Eisenhuth in at lock, and also their bench set. It'd be interesting to see if Jack Bird cracks it. I think not. For the Melbourne Storm, it is business as usual for them. On an extended bench, Remus Smith comes in. Look, the Storm are just far too strong for this Dragons side across every part of the park. I just can't see the Dragons. I can't see the Dragons scoring a point unless they kick wide and Zach Lomax grabs the ball. This Melbourne Storm side is just so strong at the moment, and they're playing a side in the Dragons that got absolutely schooled last week by the Penrith Panthers. I've got the Storm winning this one and winning very well. Griffo, what are you thinking?
Yeah, hard to disagree, Shane. Number one team in the league. They've been so good this year, even without really their best team just hasn't been able to be assembled almost at all. Yet they still come up with the goods. They're getting close to their best side on the park now. Xavier Coates would come into the team if he were fit, but essentially this is the best they've got. Up against, now credit to the Dragons, they're still equal points with the team in the 8. It's just they've got a very poor for and against. When they've lost games like they did last week, they've sort of been flogged. They play a power game that works well against teams that are not at full strength, or maybe teams that aren't real great. They beat the Panthers not all that long ago on a wet night where all Origin players were out. And in saying that, the Dragons had a couple of Origin guys. They might have had 3 guys out, Lomax, Hunt, and Jaden Sewer. But they played that power game, and it was good for them. Now, last week, when Penrith basically had, their best side in, few players still missing, but they were just outclassed. They weren't the Dragons still had their big boppers, but when Penrith got, and I say the Storm as well, when they've got their best team in, and just playing a power game with not a high skill level is not going to beat these good sides, and I think that's what we're going to see. Melbourne are just not a decent side. They're a very good side. They've got Ryan Papenhausen, they got Cameron Monster, they got Jerome Hughes, they got Harry Grant. They have the best spine in the NRL with those 4 guys in those positions. They are also quite a big side themselves, so they're not going to be out-muscled by the Dragons. I do think this week, again, like last week where they got pretty much soundly beaten, I think there's going to be a repeat of that. Interesting that Sloan was dropped last week. I watched the reserve grade highlights, and it was really 100% Tyrell Sloan. He got sort of the Penrith winger, I think it was Kapoa, virtually ran over the top of him to score a try. But then you saw him, he tapped from the 20-metre line from a restart and just ran through and scored a try. Like, he is an attacking wizard and a defensive dunce. So Flanagan dropped him because of his, poor defence. He's back this week because I think the guy that replaced him, I'm not sure if he got suspended or it might have been a concussion-related protocol. But the Dragons side done well this year, but can't beat teams like the Storm at full strength. Mika?
I have Storm winning, and Storm winning exceptionally well. I think they're going to win the whole thing. Yeah,
they're a good chance.
I think they're a very good chance with winning the lot. I think just this season, they've just been so dominant, and if you had asked me last season, I would have said no way, but yeah, I think winning by a lot.
At 7:35 on Saturday at PointsBet Stadium sees the Cronulla Sharks taking on the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Mulatalo and Hazleton are out for the Sharks.
Mulatano's big.
Yeah, it is. It's big out. Yes.
Did he have another brain fade last week? I'm just thinking there might have been something he did.
Yes.
Resulted in a try to the opposition.
I think so. I've got the same feeling.
Yeah, he had an absolute brain fade. He has that ability.
I
can't remember what it was, but it resulted in a try to the other team because he just did something dumb.
Alex Johnson's out for the Rabbitohs. He is out for the rest of the year. He has a Achilles injury, which will require surgery. That actually, in actual fact, I was doing a bit of the sums on that. He could even be in doubt for the start of next year. So that's, when you look at that's a 9-month turnaround. He could even be in doubt for the start of next year. Fletcher Myers comes in to make his debut for the South Sydney Rabbitohs. In at number 2, another person who's back for South Sydney.
Cam Murray's back.
The captain, Cam Murray's back after his fracas on the sideline.
But he is not starting in lock.
No, he's on the second row.
He's on second row.
As he has been since the last few weeks. Look, the Cronulla Sharks need to prove that they can stop the wobble. South Sydney season, I think, after last week's South Sydney season is over. But if they win the rest of the games, then they have a chance. It's mathematical, and with their for and against, it's not happening. Yeah. Will Kennedy is back for the Cronulla Sharks. That's going to absolutely bolster their back line. The Sharks need to win this game. It's as simple as that. Across the park, South Sydney are leaking points. They've been leaking them both in the middle and in the 3/4 area. Cody Walker is really struggling to find some sort of fire. And Jack Whiten, whilst he's trying to do a lot, he doesn't have the field position, which lends it to him. Damien Cook again got shuffled into the centres last week. I really think, looking at this team, I have no idea why South Sydney aren't starting Tallis Duncan, putting Host to the bench, and really looking at next year and giving some young players a go. But anyway, I'm not the coach, so that's not me. The Sharks, they're a side looking to the 8. They're a solid lineup. Backline strengthened, as I said, by Will Kennedy. Their forward pack is going to look to really create meters against the Rabbitohs, and Cameron McInnes and Blake Bradley to really exploit that middle area of the park and gain some easy meters, which is what teams have done recently against South Sydney. Head says Sharks, heart says Rabbitohs. But in all honesty, if you said that I had to put my house on one of these, I'd put it on the Sharks. I think the Sharks would be too strong. They need to cement a top 8 win and prove that this is not the time of year for them to get the wobbles. Griffo, who have you got in this one?
Yeah, it's Sharks for me. Too important for the Sharks. The Rabbitohs, they've after a dreadful start to the year, and they were deservedly criticised, including by us. They did have a bit of a purple patch there, where they came back to form. Then they lost Latrell again. Murray was suspended out of the Origin game. He's back this week, but it's too late. They still, as you look at 1 through to 5, that's probably the weakest 1 through to 5 of any NRL team.
Yeah.
Even I was thinking, are they better than the Tigers 1 to 5? Maybe not. That's where the weakness is. Obviously, there's quality in the 6 and 7. It's a good forward pack, especially with Cam Murray there, and then a good bench. But I think out wide is where they lack, and the Sharks, for me, at home in a must-win game. Again, they sort of. But I tipped them against the Cowboys last week, and they weren't too far behind, but they didn't get the job done. They have to get it done this week. Otherwise, they really then are at risk of missing the top 4. And if ever a team needs to be in the top 4, it's these guys. They've got a woeful record in finals football. They will need that second bite of the cherry. And if they lose this game, their season's not over, but it's very much on the slide.
I have Sharks for this one as well. I think South's season is over. Without Latrell, I don't think their kicking game will quite be there. Latrell can always do those high spiral bombs. We've been missing those the last few weeks. But Sharks will 100% bring it home, I think. Yeah. And it's a home game for them as well, so that's just going to add to it.
It's been a horrendous season for South, injury-wise. It's just...
I think it was at the start of the season when we lost Tyrone Munro and Campbell Graham was the big one.
Campbell Graham, they've missed him.
Yep.
Yeah. Missed him immensely.
All accounts, actually, interestingly enough, all accounts says that he really started to pick when South had those string of wins, but since they've lost, basically they've said we're not going to risk him till next year, which I think so.
Well, that's what they're. Wrap him in cotton wool. Wrap Latrell in cotton wool. Wrap Jai Arrow in cotton wool. Bring him out next year, full fit. Yeah. Bennett coming in. I do think they'll make the 8 next year, but this year, no chance with the tough draw that they've got. So,
yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, at 2:00 on Sunday, we see the Penrith Panthers taking on the Newcastle Knights. Dane Laurie and James Fisher-Harris are out. Isaiah Longy, he comes in at fullback. Interestingly, I'm just going to see. I think everyone else is more or less a extended bench player. Yep. For the Newcastle Knights, Bradman Best is out for them. So that means that you've got Dylan Lucas. He's in at the centre position. Look, the Penrith Panthers juggernaut continues to fire. The cream is rising to the surface, and the Panthers are well and truly a part of that. I'm not going to say too much about the Panthers, Griff. That's your job. But from a neutral fan of this game, what I saw last week is I saw a Penrith side just absolutely clinically at times pull the Dragons apart. I dare say the Knights are probably in the same calibre of opposition, and yet again I think they're going to do exactly the same. Probably they definitely look stronger than what they did against the Dolphins. Of course, we know that was an affected game. However, in saying that, I think the Panthers are just starting to look towards the finals now. And knowing the Panthers as we do, it's just going to be about them really trying their hand, doing their things. Jerome Luai and Nathan Cleary are going to lead them around the park. My concern for the Knights is I don't think Tyson Gamble or Phoenix Crossland have the kicking game to remotely worry the Panthers. I think that the Panthers are going to be catching the ball 20 to 30 out. Brian To'o, Taruva Tago, Casey McLean, they're going to get the ball up there. This is a team that the Penrith are going to be third tackle 40 out from the Newcastle line on most sets, and if you give that kind of room to the Panthers, you're going to lose by a bucket load. Panthers for me, Griff, and I dare say the same for you.
Yeah, I do expect a victory. Newcastle, to me, are not a good team.
No.
They made the 8 last year. They sort of rode on the back of Ponga later in the season, who was ably assisted by Dom Young. And when Young left them, I thought they might struggle a bit this year because he was so important to their attack. They've struggled in attack. They've struggled to get any consistency out of the 6 and 7. Hastings has been dropped. They bought Jack Cogger after, and he really finished the season well with Penrith. Hasn't really fired at all back at Newcastle. Cogger's listed at 14. He comes back in. He's been out for a while. Gamble was injured there for a while. He sort of made the bench. Now he's back in the 6. Phoenix Crossland has been used as a hooker for most of the year, or a 14. Originally, he was a half a few years ago. So they're chopping and changing constantly. I can't see them beating Penrith here. And it would take something extraordinary, like a guy being sent off or something like that for Penrith to not win this game. Newcastle are, just outside the 8 on 22 points. When we were having discussion earlier about who's going to make the 8, I didn't even factor them in. I just can't see them winning games. Ponga has to, be head and shoulders man of the match if there any chance. Interesting from a Penrith perspective, Isaiah Iongi is making his debut. He's been in the club for some years, in the reserve grade team, doing great things. I've not seen a lot of him, to be honest. I don't think he's the same type of player as Dylan Edwards. From what I've seen, he's more of a sort of an X factor guy.
He seems like, from what I've seen of his game, he's a bit more of a jackrabbit. Whereas so Edwards is this methodical, get the ball, hit the line hard. He's a bit more of a jackrabbit, sort of duck, chink, weaving kind of player.
Interesting to see how that works. I thought, because Dane Laurie was going well, deputising for Dylan Edwards, but he was taken out of the game very early last week, unfortunately. But I thought Taruva played very, very well when he went to fullback. And originally Taruva was a fullback, but has made his name as a winger because Edwards obviously has that position locked down. So that's something interesting for Penrith fans. This guy is in the top 30. I think he's signed for a few years. You can't see him replacing Dylan Edwards apart from injury. So I don't know whether he, sees himself possibly as a winger maybe next year, maybe coming in for Taruva, or I don't know how that's going to work. But gets his opportunity this week. James Fisher-Harris, again, also only played a very small role in last week's game due to that injury sustained, again, by an illegal tackle from one of the Dragons forwards. I think it was, I won't name them because I'm not certain of who it was. But so 2 illegal plays resulted in a couple of injuries to Panther players early in the game. They lost them for the game. It didn't affect them last week, and I don't think it's going to affect them too much this week. So Penrith for me, and you can't bank on 2 points, but I do expect it will happen, Mika.
I'm saying Penrith because they're playing the Knights, and I know Penrith will win against the Knights. Their side is just too strong. I think the only team they might lose against is really the Storm in the competition.
All right, so unanimous Panthers win there. Last game of the round with Manly having the bye sees the Bulldogs take on the Raiders at Belmore Sports Ground at 4:05. We have a key in for the Dogs is that Josh Addo-Carr, he is a key in for them. On an extended bench, we see Drew Hutchinson. He's there as well, Liam Knight, but really it's Josh Addo-Carr. He's the key in for them. For the Canberra Raiders, on the bench, Corey Horsburgh, he's named at number 20. You'd expect him to elevate his way into that side if he's fitting well. He's probably the key one for them. With also Albert Hopewadi, he's also on an extended bench. So Horsburgh is probably the key one you'd see elevated there. But for the Dogs, and of course they get their captain back in Stephen Crichton, which is massive when you consider what they did last week, and they're actually going to be doing it they did that without Stephen Crichton. They've got Josh Addo-Carr, Stephen Crichton back. It's interesting that the Raiders have hit this hit this point of the season where I think if you'd asked their fans in round 1 if round 22 they have a shot at the 8, you'd take it. However, for me, even though Raiders beat South fairly very comprehensively last week, the team still feel like they're light years apart. The Dogs just seem to be playing this exceptional array of football, which allows them to throw the ball around and do some absolutely phenomenal things. Supported out wide by their by Kickout and Preston. Josh Curran's having a great season in the forward pack. Sexton Burton, again, doing some fantastic things. Sherry, Kiraz, with Connor Tracy sort of locking in that fullback role, which is probably one you wouldn't have said at the start of the year was his. The Raiders had a very good win last week. You can't take that away from them. Sebastian Chris was absolutely savage at times out wide. They played that game out there really well after establishing the middle, getting their forward pack making really, really good meters. And Jamal Fogarty's kicking game. Look, it's going to be great to see this game. Jamal Fogarty up against Matt Burton regarding their kicking games and bombs. Always had the promise, Jamal Fogarty, and I think this year's actually shown that he's in the background. He's one of the best kickers in the NRL. We don't really know it, I suppose, because he plays for Canberra. But if you watch their games week in, week out, he really can get them on the front foot. Look, for me, I still think that regardless of what all that, the Bulldogs will be too strong. They're playing at Belmore, their ancestral home. I've got the Bulldogs winning here, Griffo. And if they wanted to, they could probably do it quite comfortably.
I will agree with you on the fact that they will win. I'm not so sure about the comfortably. I do actually. I give the Raiders a big chance of an upset. Bulldogs, obviously, they were brilliant last week. Can they back that up? Now that they bring in, as you say, Crichton and Adu Carr, two representative players, which is unlucky for the guys that have made way in Skelton and Wilson, because they were both very good last week. But so on paper, the Bulldogs obviously look like quite a stronger team. But when the Raiders put it together, they've got a lot of X factor now that they haven't had for a few years. The likes of Weeks, Timoko, Savage, Sebastian Chris also. He did well last week. Strong forward pack. I think this could be one of the best games of the round.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to stick with the Bulldogs, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. Ricky, he will. He'll be into this team talking about the fact that everyone is expecting the Bulldogs to win this. They're at Belmore. They've coming off that huge win against the Broncos. It's going, we'll get into it. No one thinks we're going to win. Everyone's writing us off, that sort of stuff. They're capable of winning this Canberra, but I have to stick with the Bulldogs. Mika.
I'm going with the Dogs as well. They had an incredible win last week against the Broncos, and so did the Raiders. But I think just in terms of what teams they played, Dogs should win this week.
All right. Well, that rounds out round 22 of the NRL. We're getting closer, ever closer to that finals, understanding who is going to be there. There's still spots up for grabs. Top 4 makeup, it's very uncertain at the moment. The top 8 makeup is exactly the same. There's teams that can make a charge, and there's movements aplenty to be had. Griffo, Mika, thanks once again for joining us. To the listeners out there, thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for being a part of the program. And as always, keep safe, take care, hope your team wins, and have a great week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanking you.
Thank you, listeners. Have a good week.
Bye.